This is Twisted Passages with award-winning author Marie Sutro. Now, let's take a deep dive into the dark world of psychological thrillers and meet the authors who created them.
Hello, and welcome to Twisted Passages. I'm your host, Marie Sutro, and today we have former architect, current professor, and all-around amazing thriller author, Amin Ahmad, here to talk about his new release, A Killer in the Family. Welcome, Amin.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Thank you for such a wonderful read. But before we jump in, can you start listeners off with an overview of what the story's about?
Okay, I'll try and do it with no spoilers. So it starts off with Ali, who's a kind of young, aimless slacker from a rich family drifting around Mumbai. And he knows there's an arranged marriage in the offing, and his parents are looking for a mate for him worldwide. And they find a bride for him with Mariam, who's the daughter of a super rich Indian American family in Manhattan that has a real estate empire. And Ali's not really super excited about this marriage. He finds Mariam's sister, Farhan, to be actually more attractive. But he's like, fine, I'll marry her because she's very rich and he thinks he's got it made. He shows up in New York and is introduced to the vast Khan family who all work for the real estate business. And he gradually begins to realize something is not right with these people. And it might have something to do with a serial killer that was active in New York about a decade ago.
And it's every bit as fabulous as that sounds. Just starting off out of the gates, you mentioned Mumbai. You give us so many rich settings. We do get to travel to, as you said, to New York when he meets the family. We get a little taste of Seville, a little brief taste of that.
Yeah.
How do you do settings so well? I feel like every place, like I've been there now, and I haven't been to Mumbai or Seville. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm an architect by training, and I've always been interested in places. So my way into fiction is really through place. I have lived in New York on and off a couple of times. I went to school very close there back in the day. I won't date myself by saying when, but when I was growing up in my 20s, New York was the city for me. So I kind of have a sense of how New York works. The specifics of New York are constantly changing, but the hierarchy of it and the physical environment of it, I'm very familiar with. Sevilla, my wife and I spent 3 months there in a sabbatical. And then Tokyo, I was purely research. That's a very small locale in the book. And Mumbai, I lived in as a kid. I've lived in a lot of places. I've moved around a lot. I've lived in the UK, Singapore, Dubai, up and down the East Coast. So I'm very used to kind of being dropped into a new place. And then just thinking, like, how does this place work? What's going on here? Right. So that's how I'm wired, I guess.
And it's interesting you talked about being dropped into different places. And that's one of the things Ali struggles with a little bit when he's dropped into New York is being that fish out of water. And it sounds like you've dealt with that a bit in your life.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. And kind of being an outsider to a place, it just makes you a little bit more observant and you start trying to figure out what's going on. But in Ali's case, poor guy, because he has an arranged marriage. So you're literally married to somebody who you have not dated and you haven't spent time with that much. And he shows up in New York and he's living in this sumptuous apartment, but she's busy. She's in a psychiatry residency program. She's on her way to being a psychiatrist. And he's kind of bumming around. He's got empty days in front of him. And he begins to kind of feel homesick and maybe regret the decision a little bit. So I definitely put some of my emotion, but that's what fiction is. You kind of take your emotion. People often say like, oh, which characters are you? And I like all of them. It's like different little parts of me go into all of them to create the engines.
And what I loved about it was the way you introduced Ali, even in the overview, right? He's kind of this artist. He bums around. He just kind of sometimes bounces into walls, bounces off. He's okay, right?
Yeah.
But over the course of this story, he's pushed. And it was funny because, first of all, he's being pushed into an arranged marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you as the author did not let up on him. You kept pushing him and kept expecting more and more and more. And what I loved about it was you did kind of give us bookends with the timeline too, which was really fun. The Ali I meet and then the Ali I get to know and see evolve over the course of
Yeah.
the book.
Yeah.
So much fun with that. So much fun with his story in this story.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's like writing characters, and now my writing teacher will come out. It's like you have to give your character a place to go, right? So it was kind of fun. And when I first started writing fiction, I wanted to write like really nice people with honorable intentions, like good people in bad situations. But it's more fun to write people who are human, who are messed up, who are confused, who do things for the wrong reasons. And Ali is one of those guys who he's from a somewhat rich family. His parents are industrialists, so he's kind of a rich kid. He's drifting around. His older brother's done all the right things, gone to Harvard and got an MBA and like, all that kind of stuff, got married. And Ali knows there's an arranged marriage coming up, and he doesn't really have the willpower to be like, no, like I'm going to leave the family and just strike out on my own. I just wanted to give him a place to go. And in fact, during the book, he's kind of forced to grow up and to kind of really confront how power works, how the world works, and what he signed up for, which he thought was a free ride, is not really a free ride. And what was kind of fun about this is that there's a lot of arranged marriage narratives in Indian fiction. So I wanted to take something that's kind of like a trope of Indian fiction and then kind of play with it.
And one of the things that you explored from so many different angles was anger. And I loved that because you have two people in Mariam and Ali who are coming from privilege, albeit different tiers of privilege, let's say.
Yeah.
But in all of these families, to some degree, Ali's family, certainly, and in Mariam's family, there's a lot of sublimated anger. For different characters for different reasons. And I started to think about that as I read the book. And, we always have these viewpoints that, oh, money and power, that's everything. If you have all the money and all the power, then you'd never be upset. You'd never be angry. You'd never be wanting, or you'd never be conflicted. And you did such a good job of showing us all the different types of dissonance that can come in to life with that level of privilege.
Yeah, I think you really nailed it there. Yeah, like Indian families, I think there's a narrative and you got to stick with the narrative. And so the people sublimate their own emotions in order to kind of present an acceptable face to the family, right? And in Ali's case, he's married into the Khan family, and the patriarch Abbas Khan has two daughters. One who's kind of a mess and one's a professional, but like clearly in his mind, neither of these women can take over his empire. And so Ali goes into this, and his mother says, marry into this family because he needs an heir, and maybe it's you. And this guy's like, what, me? And then he kind of gets pushed into this family, and there's all kinds of people there who are hoping to step up and get the big job when Abbas retires. So there's all these kind of emotions swirling within this big kind of somewhat Machiavellian family, I would say. Yeah.
And again, that concept of anger in terms of how far that can push people.
Yes.
And how it can frame, like you said, what's underneath the surface, what's been sublimated, and how long it's been sublimated.
Yes.
There's two characters where they have a history. And I think one of them recalls a psychiatrist telling them, hey, this happened a long time ago. Let it go.
Just let it go. Yeah. I don't come from money at all. In fact, I wrote this book because we really needed a new couch. And I was like, this is the one thing I know how to do. And we have this really disgusting old couch. But just I went to a kind of a boarding school, a fancy boarding school in India, where you would have these rich kids who I grew up with, who I was kind of envious with at that time because they went on very nice vacations. They were going to Scotland to shoot grouse, or going for golf tournaments all over the world. But then I've seen people kind of grow up and be like, okay, all right, you've had your fun. Now get with the family business. This is what you're going to do. This is who you're going to marry. And I've just seen people get their personalities get distorted, you know? So I think anger, especially for Indian families, and then kind of guilt are the operative operative emotions there, because nobody can really like say what they're really thinking.
And I loved the way that you portrayed Ali's entry into arranged marriage,
Mm.
because he does have this open-minded attitude, to his
Mhm.
credit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it was just that thing where every reader can just walk right into it and know exactly what he's talking about and how that would, and imagine how that would feel. And you did such a beautiful job of weaving together each of those strands that just normally would be running right in below the surface. Hey, I don't really know you. Like all of a sudden we live together now. And what does
Yeah.
that mean? And
Right.
how do you live? How do I live with you? All of that stuff.
Right. I think the advantage I had in this, the way I set up the story, was that the reader follows Ali right from the first meeting that he has with the Khans, which is supposed to be casual drop in for tea, but is to see compatibility between him and Mariam. And this is kind of a custom where no matter how old you are, there's a boy and a girl, and the families get together to have tea and just chat innocuously and see if there's any chemistry. And Ali's really not looking forward to this. So I start kind of at that point where he's hungover. He's come back from a party the night before. He's like, oh God, I got to meet another rich, dull girl. I've met so many of these rich, dull girls, you know? And like, I'll just show up and then I'll blow them off. I'll tell my mom, like, yeah, this is not working. And he is kind of surprised because he is seduced by the aura of wealth that the Khans have. And they kind of just show up. And he says that there's a radiance to them. Their wealth gives them a certain kind of radiance. They even smell different. They smell of, I'm not sure exactly what I said, but they smell of like perfume and expensive soap, right? And he's kind of taken with them. And Abbas Khan is a really charismatic guy. And he comes up and he gives Ali a double-handed handshake. And he's like, oh, my son, he's giving Ali all this attention. And Ali finds himself utterly seduced, And the analogy I think I have in the book is like when you go into those home decor stores and everything looks beautiful because it's all together, right? And you're like, oh, I want this and I want this. And you buy like a vase and you take it home and it's never that fancy. So when you see the ensemble of the Khans with their extreme wealth, he's just kind of seduced by this whole thing. So as he goes through the stages of being seduced by them and married, and then the reader is kind of following him along on his journey. So he's the device through which we enter the family.
Speaking of devices,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, whether it was Ali, Mariam, whichever character it was, you would tell us something about either a meeting that they had or something that they did.
Yeah.
You wouldn't give it all to us, Amin. You would give us an overview, and then maybe a chapter or two later, it's, oh, by the way, when this person came over, I then subsequently did XYZ. And that's what I've been doing for the last few months. And it's like, whoa, that whole meeting now has a whole different context, and where we are is totally different. And oh my goodness, what happened? Who are these people after all?
Right. So you're constantly like having to reinterpret what it is that's actually going on, right? Yeah. So that's kind of that's something I discovered from like writing many novels, is that you can kind of like just kind of like skip over an event, like if there's a party coming up and then the reader's looking forward to the party, but then you go after the party and then you're kind of like, hey, wait, what happened to the party? And then I kind of fill in a little bit here. And then later on, I reinterpret it down the line. So it just allows the story to move a lot faster. Yeah. So just something to do with playing with time and trying to, there's so many characters in this book. There's like an arranged marriage, and I really wanted it to be a page turner. So to have readers kind of waiting to get more information about things is kind of key for this kind of book, I think. Yeah.
And it was a great mystery genre device, because once I got on to, oh, I don't know if what Amin just told me is the whole story.
Right.
I was like, oh, then every subsequent scene had so many question marks. Is this one where I'll get the whole story, or am I going to get more later? So it conditioned me to start seeing mysteries before they even happened. And that was so much fun as a reader to enjoy it that way.
I'm going to take that as a massive compliment, because, as a writer, you're kind of sitting in this room, like writing away for months and years at times. And you're just like, well, this is clear in my head. Is this going to work for a reader? And another thing I just want to say is, like, when I started the story, I wanted to tell it from Ali's point of view because he's an outsider. It's actually a story about the Khans and the dynamic of the Khans and the patriarch Abbas Khan, who's a very Gatsby-esque and very complex character. But I couldn't have it narrated by Abbas because he's not self-aware. But Ali's an outsider coming into this family. So I chose him as the narrator. But after a while, I was like, wait, I need another point of view to kind of contradict some of the things that Ali is observing, to complicate them, to reinterpret them differently. So I created another point of view from the view of one of the Khan daughters, Farhan, who's actually the older daughter. And I have extracts from her diary that we read that Ali doesn't know about. So like the reader now gets put in kind of a God seat and sees what Ali is going through, and then so Ali might go and visit Farhan in her sleazy apartment in Canal Street. And then we might switch to Farhan's diary, and Ali's like, he might have one interpretation of the meeting, and Farhan's written something completely different there. So as a reader, I think it's more fun, at least for me when I'm reading books, instead of being given information to have to like put it together. It's more active reading experience. So you should never give the reader 5. You should give them 2 + 3, and let them add them up. But you never know if it's going to work. It could become, incomprehensible at a certain point. Yeah. So I'm glad you enjoyed that. Yeah.
It was absolutely flawless in execution, let me tell you. And it was so very fun, as you said, with Farhan, the way that Ali paints her and who we think she is and what she's putting down in her diary.
Right.
Maybe are in lockstep and maybe are not, because there's a little while before you give us that first diary entry. Mm-hmm. And we're hearing one voice and we're seeing through one set of eyes. And it just, all of those different ways to constantly keep us on our toes questioning was so much fun.
Thank you. Yeah, I came to this novel after spending 6 years on a failed novel. So I spent 4 years working on a novel about a surrogate mother who gives birth to a baby for an American couple and then comes to this country to steal the baby back. So I spent 4 years working on that multiple POVs plot, and then 2 years with my agent revising it. And we basically realized by the end of it, like, this has become a Frankenstein monster. This is not going to work. But I learned so much from that novel that when I came to this one, I was somehow in a different place. And so much of writing is failure and rewriting that I've kind of like learned how to put together a complex narrative, hopefully in ways that will work. But boy, it was a tough road. So I'm glad you liked it.
I absolutely did. And one of the other things I really loved were these strong women that you had in the story. And there's one character who I won't mention, but it's easy to see her as someone who's not very strong. And as the story evolves, we find out that she is, and maybe she was kind of an Atlas character carrying the world on her shoulders in certain ways. And no one knew that. And so all of those little tidbits that were always waiting to be revealed, and all of those ways that we could go back and see characters with a new set of eyes was absolutely beautiful. Because I think just in life, it's important sometimes we look at things in our lives, we make snap decisions, we put them in cubby holes and say, this is this, and that is that, these people are this, and whatever. And to remind us, no, everybody's always evolving and everybody has multiple faces sometimes.
Yeah, and don't judge a book by its cover, right? Yeah. One of my favorite stories that I heard, writing stories, was the novel The Godfather that got made into a movie. And Mario Puzo said that Don Corleone, who's the main mafia kingpin, was based on his mother, who was like a barely 5 foot Italian lady, who was tough as nails. So he took her emotional makeup and put it and created an Italian mobster out of that. And I come from a family of very matriarchal family, of very strong women. So I think, funnily enough, the easiest point of view for me to write is like a 65-year-old woman or something like it. I don't know what that says about me, but I do come from a family of strong women and also storytellers, you know. So nobody in my family's ever had like a normal day. When they come back home at the end of the day, like, oh my God, you have no idea what I just saw today. And they'll spin out a story, and then it's likely, pretty far from the truth. But yeah, I kind of grew up in that environment. So it's kind of fun for me to be back kind of writing about a big Indian family when I come from a big Indian family. And like my family, I think, is going to read this book and recognize different people tucked away, and they're like, wait, auntie so and so wasn't like that. But you're like, yeah,
It's not really that auntie. It's
yeah,
more
yeah,
like a lot of other aunties.
yes, 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 yes. But I think we all authors start with, like little bits of ourselves, little bits of people we know. And I think the real trick is, once you have a character down on the page, they don't stop evolving, right? Like you have to constantly kind of follow them and make sure that every character, no matter how heinous, has their humanity, because that's how people are. Like nobody is born like rotten or mean, or we are all shaped by these forces. And if a reader can have like a character like a boss who's a pretty tough cookie, and he's very contradictory. He's very affectionate with Oli, very ruthless in his business dealings. I just wanted to have all my characters have humanity. I think we hear so much about like nice characters, like I said before, and like having nice characters. And I keep trying to tell my students it's more fun to read complex people. Yeah.
And all those icky moments or awkward moments are the moments that stand out. Those are the ones that keep us turning the pages.
Nice. Nice. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, I can only say thank you to the family that you grew up in with all of the storytellers and all of the richness. And
Yeah. And also the trauma. I'll add, like there's a lot of trauma. So thank you for the trauma. Like you can't have a happy childhood and then become a writer. Happy people do not become writers. They become
very
investment
good
bankers,
point.
maybe.
Very
Yeah,
good point.
yeah,
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Many people say that, but
right.
but what they don't usually say is that it can make you a
Yeah.
heck of a writer too.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Yes, yes. So I do credit a lot of people in the back of the book. So if you ever get to the acknowledgments, they're all in there. Yeah.
Well, again, I mean, thank you so much. This was such a beautifully rich novel with amazing characters, fantastic setting, so propulsive. It is not one that you can put down and walk away from. You will want to inhale it in one sitting. It is a killer in the family, and it is fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amin. And thank you all for joining us for this episode of Twisted Passages. We hope to see you next time.